the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by the returning Chad Ferrin, writer and director of a lot of things, but recently Dorothea. It's good to have you back.
Hey, good to be here.
Yeah. So give people an idea of what Dorothea is about.
It's basically the chronicling the life of Dorothea Puente, who was an elderly serial killer in the late 70s, 80s was her, reign of terror mostly. And, we just kind of, follow her poisoning and burying of bodies in her backyard and kind of a Grand Guignol style of, Robert Aldrich with a little dash of Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas thrown in to kind of spice things up.
That's actually a good analogy there. So I'll get back to that. I had not heard of her before. So was this someone you were aware of? Like, well, I'm sure you didn't start writing it about somebody you know, but like, how did you find out about her? Was this someone you knew about for a long time?
No, it was, it's like anything. It's weird how things kind of happen. Gerard McMahon, rock star friend of mine who had basically composed the score for Pig Killer and has all these great 80s songs that he did. He's just, amazing, and I found out he was friends with Sharon Stone. And I said, well, hey, would you be able to get her a script if I come up with something? Yeah, no problem. So it was one of those moments where it was like, well, let's see. Let me look. True crime is hot. Let me look into female serial killers and came across Dorothea. And, the fact that she was also, in Sacramento, California, that helped. So I'm like, okay, I live in Los Angeles. So it's not like she's an Alaska serial killer where you got to deal with snow and I can stay home and shoot, so it kind of got the ball rolling. I researched her, started writing the script, and it all just kind of, flowed together with the idea of her in mind and no budget in mind. It was, normally I write a script. It's like, well, I got 50 grand. So but this was kind of like wide open, and it was such a joy to write, and it just came so easily, and, breaking the fourth wall, and, like I said, the Goodfellas inspiration and things like that, and putting in all these songs, whether it's, Cyndi Lauper, or whatever, to kind of fit the period. It's just kind of writing with this free, budget restrained, script idea. And, it just flowed, and I finished it, sent it to him. He's like, hey, this is a really good script. Yeah, I'll get it to her. He gets her the script. She liked the script, and it was kind of going in, a direction of, I'm like, well, let's do this thing. And he's
Yeah.
like, well, she wants, these changes and this and this. And then, you go by that. And, I started kind of just realizing, I only have, for each project that I write or do, I have a certain amount of steam for it. And I knew that if we stayed in this direction, it would take years probably to get this off the ground
Right.
and to
Right.
make and whatever. And we were shooting Ed Kemper at the time. And there was a scene with Susan Prever where she knocks on the door of Ed's room, and she comes out and she's wearing, negligee, and she's drunk, and she, basically asking her son if, he would fuck her, kind of thing. And she was so good in that scene, and it kind of blew me away. It clicked right then, and I'm like, maybe Susan would be interested in playing Dorothea. So it kind of, went from this big grandiose film with, A star and, big budget and whatever. And I just kind of thought, do I really want to spend the time and go in that route? Or do I want to have a great time with Susan Prever and my gang and, the people I love working with? And so I kind of sent the script to Susan. She dug it. And, in a couple of weeks, she was able to find the finance, and, we were up and running and shooting it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it started and how it ended. But it was one of those things for me. I guess, I should have kind of thought it out more of like, okay, if I want to make an A script and try to play with, a studio and go into that direction of something that you won't lose steam on, I guess. So for me, it was kind of one of those things of, I just knew it would be a long, arduous process to get this made with Sharon Stone. And that's nothing against Sharon Stone. I think she's great, but it was one of those things where I made the decision where, you just kind of go with your gut. And that's kind of the way I do everything, whether it's selling a film to a distributor or selling a car or whatever it might be. You kind of got to go with your gut of like, does this feel right or doesn't it? And I think I made the right choice, or it feels right at the moment. So.
Yeah. I really like that. I like, your movies, not just as you're here, I always enjoy your films, and,
Well, thank
this
you.
one yeah, and, all of them have a little bit of comedy, but this one is, probably a little bit more comedic than a lot of your movies. I would say a dark
Right,
comedy,
right, right.
which I'm in favor of. I like that a lot, and it was funny you said Goodfellas because I have in my notes about, like, breaking the fourth wall and, like, the idea of, like, kinda her narrating, like and after you said Goodfellas, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's yeah, right out of not like it's a copy of Goodfellas, but also even the music, like you're saying, that's very Scorsese, playing, like, music of the time to get you like, "Oh, this is the era I'm in."
Sure, 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 sure. No, I think that's for me, that's one of the most exciting things about these, and it shouldn't even matter any budget if you can kind of, things that inspire you as a filmmaker, or other films that uh, fit the model that you kind of want to go after. And for me, it was kind of going from a departure from Ed Kemper of like, how can we make this different from that? When I was writing it, and that was one of the things that her talking to camera and doing all that stuff with the split screen and it's numerous things, kind of like, okay, this is more of a fun approach to take someone poisoning and burying bodies in her backyard instead of a gloom and doom kind of
Yeah.
thing. And some people take that a wrong way. I had one interviewer just call it going, what about the victims and all that? And I'm like, I don't want to talk about that shit because, why is that brought up? This is a movie based on real life and whatever. And of course, there's victims and whatever, but it's more of a not satirical, but, just from her point of view, in a sense, whereas even, Ted Bundy or any of these killers, they don't perceive them as, or Hitler or anyone, they don't perceive themselves as bad guys. They're,
Right.
they're doing what they're doing. And, for me, it was just like, well, this is an entertaining character who, not only had the check forgery and whatever she, the abuse of home life she had and childhood, she overcame those to basically kind of build a little empire of, poisoning people, stealing their money and getting by and not getting caught for, decades. So, there's got to be some admiration for someone who's able to do that, not just someone, robbing liquor stores and, blowing their money on, new shoes or whatever it might be. She was a calculating, devious, bitch. And I was impressed with that.
Yeah, I was interested in the character because it's not one that I know, so I really enjoyed the movie, and it makes me actually wanna see if there's any documentaries or just research, because it made me very interested. And along those lines, I'm with you because if you wanna make a movie, about, the victims, go for it, that's great, but also if you don't, you should also be able to do that. And if you
Yeah, I
don't
mean,
and if you're not into it, that's fine, just, if it's not a movie for you, I get it.
yeah, and don't watch it then. I get,
Right,
this
right.
guy kept going on about the victims. I'm like, what the fuck is he a victims advocate? I mean, shit happens. People have been dying for centuries. People have been murdering. Is
Yeah, I
it
don't
is it
and I
is it
assume they
too
are, like, a
soon?
horror person, so, like, you know?
No, it was just a weird thing that really threw me off, and it got me thinking. I'm like, you know what? That did they ask this to Netflix? And when they're releasing, Ed Gein or the Menendez crap? I mean, I don't, it's not something that really enters my mind, to be completely brutally honest about it, because shit happens every day. Shit happens to me. Shit happens to you. Shit happens to the audience, and you can't dwell on it. You just got to kind of overcome it. And for me, it's she's an interesting character and interesting, cinematically person to follow. So it was, a no brainer for me to do it. And you hope that an audience enjoys it, is entertained by it, and is finds something informative about her, her myriad of crimes and her life and her whatever. So,
Yeah. I mean, you even mentioned Goodfellas. I mean, you could say the same thing about Goodfellas. It's, it's all about these people that did all awful things in their lives and, but present 'em as, and if you've ever listened to the commentary, this one won't be all about Goodfellas, but it's actually my favorite movie. If you ever listen, it's my favorite commentary track and it's called The Cop and the Crook, I think, and it's
Ooh,
Henry Hill, the guy who actually caught him,
wow.
and you could tell the guy, like, he loves these people even though he was, like, the FBI guy that was listening to them.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
he found them entertaining and charismatic, and,
Right,
yeah, he realizes they were terrible people and he got them. But at the same time, he knows that, there's a reason why people got into it because
right.
it wasn't just like, "I'm gonna try to get money," like, these were fun people to be around.
Right. Well, and I
Yeah.
think that's the same with Dorothea when you watch her interview with the police and different things with her, and she's had an aura. There was something there, and some people have it, some people don't. But you could see how she could definitely get away with what she got away with, and to do the she was had a certain bravado about her. So
Yeah, and, like you said, true crime stuff is, like, popular right now, and there has to be a reason for that. People find them interesting. They're not just all watching it to be like, remember the victims. And I'm not saying you should shit on the victims or anything like that, but, people watch this stuff. They find it, interesting and entertaining.
right, no, totally. And there's nothing to feel wrong or guilty about that. I mean, that's the thing that it was funny the way that he kept harping on this, and I'm just like, man, what the? It was very off-putting. And then you start thinking about it. It's like, should I feel bad for doing this? Should I feel? And the answer to me is finally no, because like you said, people are interested in it, and if whether it's right or it's wrong, it's kind of you can then you'd like, oh, she killed this person and this person, let me search about that person. Oh,
Yeah.
Bert, oh, what
But
did
you
he do? Oh, he was a schizophrenic drunk living in the and it just goes back to, you can now find out his story. If that intrigues you, go give money to his family. I mean, I don't give a shit, but it's it's certain things that you're able to learn from this and say, hey, this really happened. And whether they made took liberties with certain things to make it cinematic or whatever, it's still based in reality. And that to me is an interesting thing to follow up on, whether you like the movie or not. If
Mhm.
the story or her character intrigues you, you're able to find out more about it, like yourself, watch documentaries or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And that right there is something that is a good thing, because it shined a light on a tragedy or something interesting, and it got people to watch and talk about it.
Yeah, and you actually did have I thought it was a good scene in the movie. It was like the victims, not to spoil the movie, but talk about like, I'm so and so and I was 60 something, when she
Sure,
killed
sure.
me. Yeah. So it was actually in the movie, I thought. So,
No, and that's the fun thing. It's like, if someone were to poison me, and then make a movie about it, I mean, I wouldn't mind.
right. So, and real quick, last thing about Goodfellas, I was at the Goodfellas bar. I was just in Queens for 5 days for a bunch of things, and
Wow.
the buddy I was staying with, they're like, "Hey, the bar that they shot Goodfellas is 2 blocks from here. You want to go?" It's like, absolutely. So,
Oh, that's great.
yeah. So, and I've had Henry Hill on the show back in the day, which
Oh, that's neat.
not a great interview, but it was very cool for
Oh.
me to watch. He was not very sober at the time, but it was cool to have him. So did the character? Well, I guess the character maybe wouldn't change, but did like the vibe of the movie change when you bring in Susan to play the main character?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to, again, working with Susan previously on other films. There was a comfort zone, and I knew she would, nail it. And, you don't have to have that trepidation of an actor you never worked with, especially, someone who, you know, like a Sharon Stone caliber, that would be daunting or intimidating or whatever it might be. You're kind of you stay in your comfort zone, and you know that she's going to nail it and surprise you and do it. She did a phenomenal job, and it was one of those things of it really just fit. She came prepared, she knew it, and the role definitely fit her, probably better than it would have Sharon Stone. But we'll never know. But it was one of
Yeah, yeah.
those things
No, she was
where,
great in it, honestly.
yeah, no, she blew me away. I mean, it was one of those things where you I had confidence after Ed Kemper, and I knew she was going to be good, but it was even better than I had expected. And that's kind of what you look for in any of these films. But again, it goes back to when you choose this direction, and again, with Susan or whatever, I'm able to work with the crew I work with. I'm able to, you know, you have a family reunion kind of thing, and it's just fun to be able to do it instead of it's a job where you got to like, oh, millions of dollars are on the line, and where's her trailer, where all this stuff that I really don't at this time in my life don't really want to go down that road. I enjoy the control, the freedom, and the fun of making films on this level and not having to worry about, some executive, taking, umbrage to a word of dialogue or the way something is. It's just like, who cares? It's, we're having fun. We're doing the best we can with what we got, and hopefully it finds an audience. And
Yeah, I
that's
wrote
kind
in
of
my
like fun.
notes a lot of the Chad Ferrin players. That's what I was calling them. But I like that. It's like it's almost like a troupe. It's like, I know these people, and it's cool to see them in like in different roles together.
Yeah, no, and it's great, like Ezra Buzzington, for example, who plays Chief. I hadn't worked with him years. It's been probably almost 10 years since I'd worked with him, and bringing him back and having a great time. And then, I just used him again on Sunset Strip Killers. And, you just kind of reunite with actors you've worked with before or find new actors. And, you just kind of like, hey, this guy's good. He's not only good, he's, got a good attitude and a personality. And you're like, I'm going to work with him again. And you kind of just keep it going until you have so many actors, you run out of roles kind of thing.
And Robert's really funny in the movie. He's maybe like the funniest like character in the film,
Right.
and very like a very different role for him.
Yeah, no, he was he was great, and it's one of those things where, you know, aspect of it, being he was put in a coffin and it was, dumped in the river and all that kind of stuff, and he kind of embraced that of the idea of kind of, he read up on his character, found out what he did, kind of got into the whole thing, which is always nice for an actor to embrace the true aspects of it and bring that to it with their own, you know, inspiration of the character, and and he's never fails to impress.
Yeah, no, he's great in it. I was happy. I was happy he's in it, and very entertaining scenes with it. And I didn't even recognize. I was like, "Is that Joe Castro?" I think that's Joe Castro there. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
so I assume he also worked on the effects again.
yeah. No, he did a great job, and it was one of those things where he said, "Hey, do you have any roles for me?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you can play, her third husband," and he loved it.
Yeah, he's great. I'm sure I've asked this before because I've had him on a million times. What was that first time you started working with him? And was he like all the people that you continue to work with? Like
Right.
when you first work with them, do you like, oh, this is someone like I trust and I like to be around, and we're gonna, continue this if possible?
Yeah, no, I think I first met him at a screening of his film, Jackhammer Massacre, way back when, and I thought he was a cool guy, and but then we lost touch, and then I did a film, Exorcism at 60,000 Feet, where Robert Ryan had hired him to do the effects, and then
Oh
that's
yeah,
where I really got to know Joe, and impressed with able to make anything on any budget look great, and I've pretty much been working with him ever since. I mean, he's he's the best there is, and he's got a great attitude. He loves being there and doing what he does, and that really shines through on every film that I've done with him, and I'll
yeah.
continue working with
Robert
him.
Ryan, that's Corpsey.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, yeah, he not purposely got me kicked off YouTube for a little while. I used to do a lot of videos for him at conventions. The first time I ever met him was the first convention I was at. It was the
Right.
very first Days of the Dead, and he just came. My brother tells the story all the time because he's like, this guy comes up to my brother and he's just like, uh, "Will you film two girls making out in a body bag?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll do that." And then from there, I started filming a bunch of girls and corpses stuff, and some of it YouTube was not happy with, but I always liked him a lot. I think he's a funny guy.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy.
Yeah. And so when I mentioned now that I've been involved in more like film stuff, not only like having people you like around, but I think people you trust is a big thing. Like
Sure.
because there's a lot of people you I found you aren't trustworthy in movies. So uh when you find someone you could trust, it's like, oh, I would like to have this person you involved in things.
Right, right. Well, yeah, now whether it's, the DP, Jeff Billings, who I've worked with on numerous films, or the sound guy, Steven Hitzelberger, people you've done numerous films with, and you know that they're going to do a great job. They're going to show up. They're going to, not complain. You kind of, you like that, not only their talent, but also their attitude. And that's kind of infectious to everyone there. So everyone knows that it's not going to be a slog to, oh my God, we've been here 16 hours. It's like, look, it gets done, 10 pages a day, boom, you're out of there. You do, and it's people that you like being around, and that also bring out. I think that comfort also helps to think and to come up with stuff and to be more, uh, positive with it, because that there's not going to be someone who's just looking at their watch or wanting to leave,
Yeah,
or thinking this is garbage we're making. It's like everyone's there doing the best they can to make this the best that it can be. And if everyone has that same attitude, you're kind of going to be safe. And that's kind of that's one of the main reasons of working with the same people, because they're in that, we're all in the same mindset. And when you find new actors who have that, who are get it and are in that same groove, and you're like, oh, okay, like Max, the lead on Sunset Strip Killers that we just shot. I hadn't worked with him before, and he came in, he was great. And it's like, okay, here's another one to the list of guys I'll work with again. And some people you work with and you're like, I'll never work with that person again. But the ones you do find, and you're like, okay, this person's a keeper.
yeah, yeah. I'm well aware on the last movie I made. But Pat McNeely also was great as the older Dorothy. And so when I
Yeah,
first started watching, I actually thought, oh, this is the character for the whole movie. And then because I try to go in as blind as possible.
sure,
But
sure.
had you worked with her before? She has a lot of like presence on camera.
Oh, she's fantastic. She was recommended by Ezra Buzzington, who, he recommended a few other people as well. And it was like, I just go, hey, Ezra, because he does a lot of theater, and he's been around, tons of actors. So he knows who's good and who's got a good attitude, and whatever. So he'd recommend, numerous people. And, he recommended Pat after we were originally going with Lynn Lowry, who's great, and I love her. And but it's like anything. She, a manager got involved, and the manager's like, well, she needs this much. Well, there's only this much. You either do it for that much or take a hike.
Or you don't
And he's
do
like,
anything.
and to her chagrin, he's like, well, take a hike. So and I felt bad about it, and I'd love to work with
Yeah,
Lynn down the
Lynn
road.
is great. Yeah,
She's great,
that's too bad.
but then Pat, put in her audition, and she was fantastic, and she was local, and it worked out perfect. And she had this great kind of Texas accent that the real Dorothea didn't have. But then I was able to work it into the script, and then able to give Susan was able to study that and kind of come up with it a little bit to match. So it was certain things that you know especially if you have a little bit of time beforehand to work it that actor's style.
Yeah, that's something I always bring up actually when people are playing like the same role, but different ages in a movie. If like they get together all to get like some mannerisms or a little bit the way they talk, and so I'm glad that they did something.
Yeah. No, especially if if they're good actors, they embrace that. They're like, oh, this is someone I'm going to try to, up the bar of their level, or it's like anytime a good actor plays off another good actor, they kind of bring up a level in both of themselves. Whereas if a mediocre actor is working with a great actor, it just kind of
Yeah.
evens out.
Yeah. I had that experience actually in my last movie. I was I don't want to keep talking about myself, but I was the first time I actually felt like an actor. I did a really big
Oh,
scene. I was like, oh, this was good. I'm good in this, and
oh,
people
that's great.
applauded. I was very happy. Yeah. And because I always heard people talk about that, and part of me is like, I guess so. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe I'm kind of like rolling my eyes. Yeah, this is just an actor talking. But then like I experienced it. I was like, oh yeah, I get it now.
No, no, totally. I mean, that is such a thing where you can do, and you see it on screen, or you just feel an energy if two actors are this top caliber. They bring their game up, and everyone's game around them up. Whereas you've got someone who's just phoning it in, it kind of just.
Yeah. And I honestly, like, so as soon as I saw, Susan after seeing Pat, I realized they were the same character, and, I didn't even put together at the time, but I think that's probably, the movie itself, but also both the actors, like,
Sure,
there's,
sure.
like, a chemistry there or, like, a similarity there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Bring Stevens is always good and stuff, and I think I'll be interviewing her about the movie, so I was glad to
Oh,
see,
good.
Brink back.
No, she's a lot of fun. And again, that's thanks to Joe Castro. He brought her in on Ed Kemper, and
Yeah.
then this rolled into this. And she's just fantastic. I mean, she again, great presence, great actress. I mean, and just fun to have on set. She's really, I can't say enough good things about her. She's great.
Yeah, I think Joe really, credits her for, like, him getting into the business.
That's great.
Yeah, which it was very nice.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I had score in my notes, and you mentioned a little bit about it, but, so I think, like, even is it all, like, music from different eras, or is there some, like, original score in there?
Yeah, no, it's all original score from Richard Band, and then some songs from
Okay.
we've got songs from the '60s, '70s, and '80s from a group called Zephyr, and then Gerard McMahon gave us a couple songs that he had from the '80s, to fit the period, and that worked great. And it's one of those things where we don't have a lot of budget, so you kind of contact people and especially who have music from that era, because it's always hard to replicate a
Yeah, yeah.
song or a feel from something. But luckily these guys have been around forever, and they've got some great music from the period, and put it in. They also had songs in Ed Kemper, and so it fit good. Not only are they good songs and they fit the period, it's that they're like, hey, they know me and we've got a relationship, and they're able to give me a deal on it instead of saying, oh, it's $20,000 for a song, and it's
Yep.
here's what our budget is. It'll look great. It'll help bring people, if they're like, hey, I love that song. They look it up. It's the way it kind of should be, and it used to be. For you'd see a movie like Last American Virgin. And it's filled top to bottom with all this great
Yeah.
music, and it's like, how did this little movie afford all that music? But back then you were able to do it. Now it's just come so crazy where it's like, I was trying to get Speedy Gonzalez from Pat Boone, and they contacted me first. His manager is like, oh well, send us the scene and whatever, and then I sent the scene, and then she's like, there's no way Pat would ever let me use this song in this movie. And so things like that there, it's like, what the fuck is Pat Boone? Why would he be so upset about that scene? They're driving with a coffin, but he was. So we didn't get it, but you got to try. And
Yeah, yeah. The worst you can hear is no. He's not going to come beat you up or something, most likely. So, but that's a good point though about music. Like, the Wonder Years, one of my favorite, like, shows. Like, and that's why it took so long for it to, like, come out on like a physical release, because there's, like, so much music, and if you took the music out,
Oh,
like, it's the show's, like, doesn't really work anymore.
right, right, right. No, and I'm trying to think the show that I think Miami Vice kind of had the same issue where and then they stream it one way without certain songs, and then the only way to hear those songs is on physical media. It's a weird thing, because you would think back then, I mean, you buy a song and it's in this movie forever. Not,
Yeah.
oh well, except for if it goes here, it's very strange that.
Yeah, I don't know if you're a wrestling guy, but I do a wrestling podcast too, and, like, 90s ECW, it's butchered without the music, because it all
Wow.
had very specific songs for everybody. They didn't get licenses for anything, but if you watch it today in WWE Network, without the music, it's like this really bad generic stuff that doesn't fit anybody, and
Right, right.
it's just bad. So, and I think fake nostalgia is very annoying to me. So, like,
Sure.
so the music sounds like the era is what you're saying.
Right, right. It's got to. I mean, if there's something that it's just like, fake a song, sound like, whatever, it never works. So it's better to even, do some digging and find an obscure band or whatever it might be, and see if they're up for it. I mean, it just takes a little more legwork,
Yeah, yeah. And so you have some Edgar Allan Poe in there. Like, did you just think that match, or like, what was like the thought process?
Oh, it's any of those things of, when you come across a scene or a line that she says, and then it's all, oh, hey, let's use an Edgar Allan Poe poem in there. It just kind of, in the writing process, came through and fleshed out. And then I'm like, this is great. And her Pat's voiceover is perfect for it. I mean, that was a fun thing, not only in the writing, again, with breaking the fourth wall, but voiceover and, narration and all these different things, the split screen, all these things that you can kind of go off and do whatever you want. If there was a thing, if I had a good animator, like, a Chuck Jones or something, you're like, hey, let's put a cartoon segment in, I would have done it. There was a great, fun, exciting freedom within this narrative, and to kind of go into and do things that I'd not done before was, really thrilling and fun. And, it's hard, because then when I went to write Night Stalker, I'm like, okay, I can't do any narrative.
Yeah, yeah.
Can't talk.
Yeah, I don't know, a dark comedy Night Stalker would really, maybe it could work. I don't know, but I don't really see it. Yeah.
But there were
don't go back on that other guy's show. He will not be happy, I assume.
No.
And so I also think like the split screen and all that, it makes it feel like a movie from another era, which and in a good way. It's not like it's like an outdated movie or something.
No, totally.
There's even a part, and I don't mean this as a knock. It's when Robert falls down the stairs, and you could tell it's like, I actually think that scene's great, because it seems like I'm watching, a movie from like the 70s or something, where you could tell it's a different guy, a stuntman.
Yeah. No, it was one of those things, because that was done by Curtis, who was, I think that was the first movie he worked on. Another guy who had blindly emailed me. I get scripts, I get pitches, I get whatever constantly. And you always wonder, God, why are these people reaching out to me? But, so he had reached out and said he wanted to work on one of my films. He had saw the deep ones, really liked it. I'm like, hey, well, if you want to, work on this and, be a production assistant, you're, $50 a day, you're welcome to join. And, then I'm like, oh, do you happen to have a laptop? You could be the DIT guy. You haven't got a laptop. So, I mean, you just have great enthusiasm. And then we're on set, and I'm getting prepared, because I was going to do the stunt and, fall down the steps, because I'm like, if I want to ask an actor to do it, I'll show you how it's done. And Robert's like, I'm not doing it no matter how many times. I'm like, okay, give me the fucking hat, give me the jacket. And then Curtis is like, hey, I'll do it for you. Oh, okay. So he did the stunt, did great, and we're like, first take, you got it? And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. Well, you want me to do it again? Sure. So he did it twice, and, just a total trooper. I mean, and, had a great time doing it and didn't break any bones. And, it's one of those things, again, finding people who, are gung-ho about doing it, and not, worrying about, oh, I'm only getting paid this, or I'm getting that.
Yeah. No, I love this scene for a couple reasons. Like I said, you could, and that's not a knock at all. I just think it really matches. And also you could tell it's a real guy doing it, which is cool. It's not like a CG or whatever. It's like a real guy falling down the steps.
No, it's like, you watch, I was watching, Exorcist 3 again, because it was on TV, and it's amazing movie.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But you're watching, George C. Scott race to his house with, the cop car and the cop driving, and you can tell it's a long shot, but you're like, that's not him sitting in the front seat. Yeah. So, there's certain things, and you just kind of like, to me, that's kind of a warm thing. Like you said, not a knock. It's just one of those things of like, of course, George C. Scott's not going to be there for that fucking day driving a car, through the streets and, whatever. You use a stunt guy or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And the Poe poem, like, I think it gives it kind of like a timeless like feel, like that there's been evil around like for a long time. So it's like, harkening back to the sun. And I also think like, even if people don't know, if they don't know exactly where that's from, they'll know that it's from something. And I think it just kind of signals something in your mind.
Oh, totally. And I think, that's the great thing about not only great literature, great music, whatever, Dorothea at one point was reading that poem or whatever. That's the amazing thing of stuff like Edgar Allan Poe or Lovecraft or Beethoven or whatever. It's got such a timeless feel that when you kind of see it and then you start thinking about things, it's like, okay, Dorothea was reading this and listening to Bach, or, Adolf Hitler was reading this,
Right,
listening,
yeah.
at Ted Bundy or any of these things. It's like, wow, man, they were, you just think of the things that music or film or, literature has an effect on the whole world. And it's really kind of a timeless, interesting thing. And when you can put something like that in a little movie like this, it just is not only thrilling for me, it gets me excited being a fan of Poe or, whatever it might be, that it fits in the film, and people like you or the audience reads it and like, hey, that's a neat full circle of, whatever it might be. And it kind of connects not only the material, but that, Dorothea Puente had read that poem as everyone of her age or my age or your age has at one point. And it's an interesting connection to other things that's not just some chick killing people,
Mhm.
that kind of connects you to it. And it's like if you find out, she was a big fan of a certain music, and so are you. It kind of draws, and she might be a despicable person, but you're like, hey, we both like, pasta, or, there's a
Yeah, they
connection.
can't be all bad. Yeah.
There's a connection that you're like,
Uh,
well, okay, we got things in common. That's all right.
yeah. It does humanize them too. It's like,
Yeah,
they're still human people, even if they've
right.
done stuff that aren't. Uh, so I should have mentioned that, gonna have a limited, theatrical run starting Halloween, so that's cool. Have you actually seen it with an audience? Like, was there a
Yeah.
premiere?
No, we played it at the Valley Film Festival a couple months ago, and it was really
Oh,
probably the best theatrical screening I had with an audience. I mean, it was a pretty much packed house. They all loved it. They laughed where they were supposed to laugh. They oohed, they awed. And, it was really an electric feeling, one I rarely have had. So, for them to, really click on it, I was like, hey, maybe the audience will like this one. I mean, you hope they like all of them, but,
yeah.
it's one of those things where this one had more of a kind of a crossover than Ed Kemper, where that can turn off a certain number of people with rapes or whatever it might be,
Mhm.
where this had more of kind of everyone. There is something in it for everyone to enjoy in the
Yeah,
the true
it's
crime
a
realm.
more of a lighthearted movie.
Yeah,
The for people into serial killers or whatever, but, I don't know, I do think it's probably more, approachable movie or something, that I do think maybe a more mainstream movie in a way, even though I
yeah,
wouldn't call it a mainstream movie, but
right. Whereas, like, Richard Ramirez will make you puke your fucking guts out. I mean, that's 2 hours of, snuff film. I mean, that thing is, you know, Lucio Fulci all the way. I mean,
oh, well, yeah,
one
yeah, me
nasty
excited.
that's one nasty film, I can tell you that. I mean, it was a
Uh,
nasty fucking script to write. It made me, I'm still getting over writing that thing. It is traumatizing. And, whereas, like you said, talk about the victims. Oh my God. Because a lot of them, that survived his attack, they're still
mhm,
kicking. So it's one of those things where, and, you feel bad because he did some heinous stuff. And
yeah,
whereas, it's one thing, Dorothea's bad, but, you drink a cup of poison and you die. It's not as bad as, a 2 hour rape and, sodomy and beaten and whatever. And then, your husband's shot in the face 5 times while, he fucks you over his corpse. That's, some tough stuff that
yeah,
actually
sounds like a
happened. And
yeah, sounds like a real jerk. Yeah, it's
but
no,
again, a charismatic dude. I
yeah,
mean,
oh, yeah, 'cause because there's stuff out there, and, it's weird when I'm really interested in the movie because it's somebody I've watched a lot of videos about, and it's weird that, like, so many women were into him because then also people said, like, he had this bad smell and he was, like, this
right,
disgusting guy, but yet people were, like, really, really drawn to him.
right. No, he was like a rock star, and it's one of those things. Speaking of Richard Band, he had actually in the early '80s had dinner with Ramirez twice at this girl he was, Richard was kind of Richard Band, knew this woman who was kind of on and off again relationship, and she's like, "Hey, having a friend over for dinner. Do you want to join us?" And he comes over, and she's like, "Richard, I'd like you to meet Richard Ramirez." And I was like, "Oh my God, that is a bizarre. You don't hear that every
Yeah.
day." And I'm like, how was he? And he's like, he's a pretty nice guy, soft spoken, didn't say anything too weird. I mean, and I'm just, then you start thinking, God, how did this girl meet him? And she's like, I guess he said he met Ramirez at the gym or something weird. And it was just like, what a bizarre story. And he kept saying, Chad, are you going to work that into the script? And I'm like, I don't think so. It's hard to, I'm
Yeah.
kind of, my version of Ramirez is basically the audience is getting in that car with him from the get go, stealing it, hot wiring it, and then driving and breaking into a woman's house, and you're cutting her head off, writing pentagrams on the wall. You're with Ramirez that whole time. Throughout the movie, there's no, it's a horror movie, balls to the wall, nauseating. It's Serbian film and it's true crime all the way. And that's the only reason that got me interested in doing it, because the police angle has been done before with the TV movie, that it actually isn't that bad. It's very accurate and gets it done, but they kind of covered that angle. So it's like, for me, if you're going to do it, you're in the driver's seat with Ramirez as an audience, and
Yeah,
kind of
and the
going,
American Horror Story version of him, that one, actually, I could see that other guy having an issue with that, because it is weird, like, they really romanticize him, like, he's like this,
right,
like he's like this studly guy, he's I don't know, it is a very strange.
right.
Yeah.
No, especially in real life, he was very shy, and he had, numerous issues, and it was just like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing of when the sun would go down, or he'd break into a house, and the devil took over, kind of thing. And
Well,
and I think that's one thing that if you there's no glossing over or trying to humanize or find things with him, and that was the hardest aspect to write about a guy. Whereas Ted Bundy, there wasn't charismatic, he was totally knew what he was doing. Whereas Ramirez, it was almost, like I said, a Jekyll and the Hyde, or the devil kind of took over once the sun went down and he broke into a house. It was, all bets
yeah,
off.
and you were saying, earlier about, like, most villains, they think what they're doing is right, but I think that's a guy that didn't. Like, that's like an actual evil person, and people always talk about, like, the Church of Satan, but they don't really even believe Satan also. But this is a guy that actually did worship, Satan, that, like, people
Yeah.
think of all these Satanists as what they're doing, which there aren't, but this is, like, that's a guy that people think of when they think of a Satanist.
No, totally. And it's scary because, and that's the other thing about, Los Angeles at the time. I mean, everyone was terrified of this guy, or you hear stories, you talk to, people who uh, one of the actresses on one of my films, she lived next door to one of the victims that survived. And she was friends with her son, and, all this stuff. She would tell the stories of, how traumatized they were, and how they, and it's just like, it hit everyone was putting locks on their windows and doors. I mean, you kind of took over this whole thing, and, scared the bejesus out of everyone living here.
So you mentioned the premiere at the festival. Do you do a lot of festivals? Like, do you submit your films to a lot of festivals?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the way of, before you would finish a film, submit it to 100 festivals, you get into maybe 3, and then, you would hope that buzz and that, the reviews and everything would be positive to help, boost up your visibility to a distributor. And then you submit to countless distributors and you say, hey, there's this great review from whatever. And they're like, oh, well, I'll take a look at it. Sure. No, it's a piece of shit. Or, but it helps you kind of build a reputation with the film, or to give it a life on this fest circuit. And, hopefully it, finds an audience there, and the distributors, it just kind of helps build it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a fan of festivals, and I've been involved, in a couple of movies with festivals, and
Sure.
but there's so many now. So for anyone, like, starting to get into it would best, I think, to ask someone with some experience, because some of them, like, it's literally like people, like, on Zoom watching them, or
Right, right. No, it's kind of going back, looking what their past, festivals were like, what kind of press they got out of it, what kind of, audience is showing up. It's kind of, does it mean anything to a distributor? I mean, I think there's only like 4 or 5 that really mean anything, like whether it's Toronto or Sundance, or Tribeca, or, and even that, there's tons of films who have played those and then never find a distributor. So it's kind of,
yeah.
it really is a hard thing to nail down of what clicks. And that's kind of for me why true crime is something I'd stay in, because there's an audience for it, there's a market for it. Whereas, the Lovecraft stuff was kind of dying out right after the deep ones when we did old ones, because old ones was, just a failure. And so was the Eddie Furlong Unspeakable Beyond the Wall of Sleep, were massive
But I
failures
liked it.
compared to the deep ones. And that's kind of the direction I went. And then it's like, oh man, strike out, strike out. And you feel like shit because you've got an investor calling, threatening to break your legs because he wants his money back. And you're like,
Right.
well, here's the statement from the distributor. The thing hasn't made shit. Maybe if you were out promoting it. So fuck, there's certain things that,
Uh,
who's to blame? Am I to blame? Is the audience to blame? I don't know, but I stopped kind of wanting to take a gamble and depend on certain things. And I'm like, okay, this true crime, there's a solid audience for it. I'm interested in it, and the distributor is interested. So that's something that I kind of, now gravitate to. And now I think about all projects. Is there a market for it? Who wants to see this?
mhm.
If it's made for a certain amount, like, 100 grand, no matter what it is, you're probably safe over time that will recoup. If it's a couple 100 grand, you better make sure that thing finds an audience, because it's, the money's not there anymore. There's no more, Blockbuster. There's no more even Redbox. When the deep ones came out, there was Redbox. There was, Walmart was a good thing, and it got all of those. And then by
Mhm.
the time old ones came out, those things were gone pretty much. So it lost a chunk of money in that, and you just started thinking, oh man, what? You just, rethink the whole thing, and it's not, because it's not just about a director or a writer's artistic choice or whatever, or making it from the heart. It goes to numerous folds of, you got to get your money back to the investors. People need to be paid. The distributor, you want them to make their money back so they'll work with you again. There's certain things that, that I now think out much more than I did before, because it was just like, hey, we're making a movie. It's going to be
Yeah, yeah.
great. It's going to be whatever. And then you realize, oh, nobody wants to buy it, or nobody wants to, get it into the
Yeah, and if you
festival.
wanna make another one, you have to have people who bought the previous one.
Right, right.
Yeah. Uh, it's weird the Lovecraft, thing, because there's, like, a big Lovecraft, convention near me. I've never been to it, but, I had someone on that was the promoter of it, and
Sure.
they talked about, like, hating Lovecraft as a person, which is fine, whatever, but they, like, wanted to remove his name from, like, their trophies, and I was just like, I really
What?
just thought I just wanted to say, like, "Why do you even run this? Why don't you just call it something else?" You know? Like,
Well, I think
it was very strange.
that's the fucked up thing about it, where it's gotten such a bad rap that it's like, you start to question, well, I don't know. I mean, I love his writing.
Mhm.
Do I want to marry the guy? I mean, I don't know. You got to just kind of step back and say, so he was a piece of shit in real life. Does that destroy all of his work, its talent and whatever? I don't think so. So, I kind of find it strange, especially a festival that is whatever is
Yeah.
now walking back the whole thing, because he's an inspiration to countless
Oh,
creators,
yeah, I
whether
mean,
it's
all, like,
directors or
all modern, modern being, like, the last 100 years, King and,
right,
just that, like, pretty much every writer is influenced by him.
right, right.
Yeah.
Just because someone's a piece of shit in real life doesn't shouldn't take away from their art. To be honest.
And, so, speaking of art and stuff, at the end of the movie, in the memory of, David Lynch. Is that someone that, inspired you to be a
Oh,
filmmaker?
completely. I mean, it's someone who was not only like a down to earth kind of Midwestern guy like myself, I guess. So we had that in connection, but able to the stuff that he did, and the way he did it is just beyond what anyone else has ever done or will do. I mean, he really was one of a kind, and it's you'd think the guy would live forever, and then when he's gone, it's just like, wow, that's wild. You thought he'd be there forever, and that's, I think, the fucked up thing about death. It kind of brings everything full circle, and you're like, it's not, you know, your time is limited here, so that's why it pushes me even further to do as much as I can, as fast as I can. If someone's willing to say, "Hey, here's whatever to do this," I'll get behind it and do it instead of, because your time is limited. So, no, he was a huge inspiration, and it's one of those things, just timeless. His work, not only for cinema, but his painting, his photography. I mean, even the way he would tell a story, I mean, is amazing. I remember he was telling a story or reading an excerpt from his book on one of the Criterion DVDs of the Black Dahlia murder, actually, where he's at Musso and Frank's restaurant with one of the detectives who was working the case. And the detective, they're there one night and he pulls up a briefcase and he opens it and he hands David Lynch a photograph of the Black Dahlia murder. And he's like, "What do you notice in that picture that's different from all the other Black Dahlia murder photos?" And David Lynch is staring at it and staring at it and staring at it. And he's like, I don't know. And detective takes the photo, puts it back in the thing, closes it. "I'm not going to tell you." so so then, a week later, David Lynch, he springs up in bed and he's like, "Oh, the photograph was taken at night because the body was found in the morning and it was taken during every other photograph." So he's like, calls the guy up. He's like, "What the hell? That was taken at night." He's like, "Yes, I received that in the mail from this woman whose husband had this photograph basically in his, after he had died, in his safe or whatever it was, and she had mailed it to the police." And so you're just thinking there, and it's like, well, her husband was the killer, and it goes into all this stuff that, he didn't,
Yeah.
you never find out about it, but opened this whole door of whatever. It's like, oh, another layer of the Black Dahlia murder that, connected to David Lynch and his story and whatever, or his stories about Marlon Brando going and seeing, his film with, Lost Highway with all this candy and especially, just great stories. And you're transported to that and just, he was a one of a kind and just a true, genius in the art of film.
And what I took away from that actually story is that's kind of like that's like his work, his films and his TV shows. It's like, uh, what does this mean in this movie? I'm
Right,
not going to tell you. You gotta think about it and figure it out for yourself. So,
right. No, and
yeah.
that's pretty amazing. And what he accomplished, even with, after he died, you start looking at all his other stuff that you hadn't seen in a long time, like Twin Peaks. I hadn't watched the original series since it aired, you know, 30 years ago or whatever. So rewatching that and you're like, oh, that's neat. Or, you kind of reconnect with him or, and then watching, the Twin Peaks, The Return, which again is a masterpiece. I mean, it's really got some amazing stuff. If you haven't seen that, it's really some of his best work. And just the people who have worked with him from, Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive, and, the connections of when he reused an actor, like Jack Nance or what, certain things that for me as a filmmaker, there's a connection to that you're kind of like, again, you find someone you like working with and you use them again and again and again. So and and he smoked, I smoke. There's connections that
I drink a
you
lot of black
feel,
coffee, but yes.
and lots of black coffee and pie.
But yeah, no, and what you're saying about, time limited, because you think of all this great stuff he did, but then you also do think like, what about all the stuff that he almost made and never got to make, or there's not going to be a fourth season of Twin Peaks, or maybe another Twin Peaks movie.
Right. No, and you gotta realize, look, our time here is short. Grab the bull by the horns and do it. And if it's one of those things of waiting for a big budget with Sharon Stone, or doing it on a smaller budget with Susan, and you're like, I'll take that because I know it's 100% for sure. It's going to happen. It's going to get made. The other one is a maybe. It might be a strong maybe or a big maybe, but it's still a maybe. And I think I'd rather go with the sure thing than a maybe any day. So
Yeah, it exists. It's here now. People can see it. It's not a movie in your head.
right,
It,
right.
yeah,
It's alive.
yeah. And so where can people go to see like just information about the movie, where it's gonna play? And... when it's gonna come out,
Um,
physical or VOD?
yeah, I think it comes out November 4th on VOD, streaming and all that stuff. On Halloween, it has the little theatrical run. On the 28th, it's playing here in Santa Monica for one day with cast and crew and anyone and everyone off the street, and they can throw fruit at the screen and me, and or or applaud wildly. So that's there, and then it'll come out physical release, I guess early next year.
Oh, cool. All right. Sounds good.
But they can go to
And,
Dread Central Epic Pictures website, or their Facebook, Instagram. I mean, all that stuff has information.
yeah. And, the Ramirez movie, when will that be, out to the world?
We start shooting in February, so it should be released, I would think, by early fall, or
All right.
even around there. I would definitely that in the year 2026.
Will we see a lot of, the Chad Ferrin players in it?
But yes, it's a harder one because even like Susan is like, I'm not going to get raped for 10 minutes. So
Fair
it's hard to find certain roles for a lot of them, but they'll sneak away in somewhere.
Do you have your Richard Ramirez?
Yeah, it's played by Peter Mendoza, who I worked with. He was in Dorothea. He played the husband in the pink Cadillac.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, cool.
No, he's great, and he's 100% committed. He's lost like 20 pounds. He's the hair is growing out. He's going to be scary. He's good.
All right, cool. All right, I'm looking forward to that. And I really liked Dorothea. I thought it was really fun. A lot different than a lot of your other movies, which I enjoy all of them. And not just because you're here. I do. I do. I like your Lovecraft stuff, but I probably more of a true crime guy than a Lovecraft guy. So I really dig these.
Yeah, me too now.
Though I like the Lovecraft stuff too. I've never read Lovecraft story, but I do like a lot of the movies that are inspired by it.
No, I think and that's the thing. I love it too, and I even if they do poorly or whatever it is, for me, I never lose the affection or the joy of making them. It's you can get heartbroken that something doesn't find an audience, but at the same time, that doesn't take away from the experience of making it and the your heart and soul that you put into it. You hope every film does well and finds an audience, but there's some that take years to do so, and you just got to stand by it.
Since you did have the Poe poem, would you ever want to do a Poe story as a movie?
I'd love to. I mean, it's one of those things where Roger Corman did them so well.
Yeah.
You would have to be the right story and kind of work within the confines of it, because those were so beautiful, and the Vincent Price, and the it's hard to top those.
Yeah. It's hard to find your Vincent Price of
right. Not only Vincent Price, but like the Technicolor look and the feet. I mean, they were just lush and beautiful. I mean, it's something, no matter what they say about digital, it's just it never will to have that kind of look and feel as film did. So
Have you worked with film?
Yeah.
Have you done anything?
The first Unspeakable was shot Super 16.
Okay.
It was great, and I love film and would love to do it, but at the same time, it's just on these budgets, it's not viable kind of thing to do.
Yeah. Just real quick about that. So like on film, you're gonna do to less takes. Is there pluses and minuses to that? Because I did a movie. I acted in a movie of 16 millimeter, and going in, I was nervous, like I need to know my lines. But afterwards, I actually thought that was better, because then I didn't no one really wasted time, and everyone was really more prepared, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's even on these, because of speed, whether it's digital or film, you're really only shooting 1 or 2 takes, because you got to get the hell out of there and move on to the next scene. So I kind of keep the same as film as for me is with digital, of getting it right in a couple takes, and that's again while working with actors that that are going to show up and know their lines, that are going to give something to it and not be wooden or whatever it might be, but because you don't have time for 15 takes of, hi mom, you gotta move on, move on, move on. And then one thing that I really learned on Sunset Strip Killers is, when I finished the rough cut, it was like 2 hours long, and I'm like, oh my god, how did a 100-minute movie get to 2 hours? So I had to go in and cut it down to 89 minutes, and it's just like certain things that you're like, this whole opening is gone, this is gone, this is all these things that you're pulling out and throwing on the floor, that you start getting like, look how much time we wasted filming this crap that is not even going to end up there. And I'm not saying
Right.
it's not a good scene, but it's just like, you don't need it. And it was one of those things that, you just, I'm like, look, we could have done 10 takes of whatever it might have been, because we wouldn't have had to film all this stuff that ended up on the cutting room floor.
Right.
But you don't know that until you put it together in the editing room, and it was kind of a shocking thing. Whereas on Dorothea, the distributor had me cut 10 minutes out of it, because my cut, the director's cut, is has a whole different opening, and different things throughout that kind of build more on her earlier life, that they were like, hey, lose this, lose that. And I'm like, I've got no problem, because they let me have a director's cut that I can release later.
Cool. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me. So it's one of those things. But again, on that, you're like, well, you could get away with, we wouldn't have had to film that. So we could have shot this in a week, and on half the budget, if we didn't shoot those things that ended up on the cutting room floor. So 1 or 2 takes for me is kind of the average thing, no matter if it's digital or film.
Is that hard to edit that? Was it ever hard to like edit stuff like that out? I assume it's different now since you've done a lot of movies. But
No, because well, for some things, like Ed Kemper, there's certain scenes that I would not cut out, like the Al Jolson stuff. That, but the fact that they let me keep a director's cut that will see the light of day, it's easier to swallow. If I didn't have a way to release that or whatever, it would be harder to cut those things, because I believe in certain things that helped the story along, or made it more interesting to me. But you got to do what you got to do. If a distributor is like, lose it, to me, I'm not going to fight over it, because they're releasing the film, they're putting money into it, they're doing it. I can understand the business behind it, and I'm not going to whine about it or pull the deal away, because I know that, like, especially with Dread, they're going to do a decent release and not just throw it out on Tubi and hope a penny comes in every 3 months. There's someone who, they get behind it, and if they just want some minor cuts, I don't care. But especially if they're going to let me release the director's cut, which they do, and that's why our relationship has been good and continues, is because we're on the same page as far as that is. Whereas some directors get such up in arms, where it's like, this is my baby, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, I'm not going to cut that, I want to control the poster, I want to, and it's just like, I kind of just let all that stuff go. It's it's in their hands now. I'm on to other movies. I did, my heart was in it for X amount of time. Now I'm on to something else, and it's their challenge to make it live and breathe and find an audience.
I'm interested in seeing the director's cut of Ed Kemper. I was a big fan of Ed Kemper. So. Well, the movie,
it's good.
Not necessarily the guy. But yeah.
Again, a charismatic guy.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
You want to have a beer with him.
I've tried to find some of his audiobooks, because he read a bunch of audiobooks.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're like actually on Audible, or maybe I could find them somewhere to download or something.
It'd be interesting to hear them. I'm sure they're great.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was great. It's always fun talking with you, and I thought the movie was awesome, and I hope people check it out.
Me too. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and congrats on the movie.
Thanks,
and I'm looking forward to Ramirez.